some acting experience as far back as the late 50s, I believe. Is that right?
The late 50s, yeah.
Were you harbouring acting ambitions at that stage?
Well, yeah, I set off to be I wanted to be an actor. But then I got sidetracked into music, and I went to my cousin was an actor. He worked at some playhouse theaters in Hollywood there, and live theater, and I used to go up and watch him, and I really wanted to do that. And then one weekend, I went with him down to Southern California, Del Mar, somewhere down in there, and there was a coffee house, and some guys in there singing folk music, playing acoustic nylon string guitars, and it just knocked me out. It just struck a chord in my heart, and I really wanted. So the next week, I bought a guitar, and I learned how to play an F and a C and a G and a D. And all of a sudden, then I bought all the Kingston Trio albums and the Harry Belafonte albums and Bud and Travis albums, and learned all their songs, and I would sing them at parties. So that's basically how I got started,
That was your first real encounter with folk music?
Yeah, and I just loved it. And my first job I got as an accident. I had a date with a girl who I thought I was supposed to pick her up at 8, and she thought I was supposed to be there at 7. So at 7:30, she said, "Who does he think he is?" standing me up. So she left. I got there at 8, and she was gone. So I went over to my uncle's in Santa Monica, who owned a bar there, Sterling's. And I went in, and I was having a few drinks, and I was miserable, and been stood up by this beautiful girl, and I kind of befriended the piano player there who sang and played the piano. And at the end of the evening, one of the girls, the waitresses, it was her birthday, so they invited me to come to the birthday party. And I went over to this lady's house, and we all, just partied until the sun came up, and I had my guitar. I was singing all the songs I knew, which is about 5 or 6 songs at that time. And the following Monday, I got a call from the girl who said a friend of hers owned a restaurant, bar and grill kind of a place there on Sunset Boulevard in Santa Monica. And his piano player was sick. Could I come and sing? So I told him, I said, well, I only know about 5 or 6 songs all the way through. Then, and the guy said, well, just do what you did at the birthday party the other night. He said, I'll give you $50 cash, and you can keep all your tips. So I went down there that night. I made about $70 in tips. By the end of the evening, people were calling on the telephone and calling their friends saying, you got to get down here and hear this guy sing. I couldn't believe it. Place was packed. It was one of his best bar nights he'd had in months. So I started singing there 3 nights a week, and I was still working as a pipe fitter during the day. So one thing led to another. Then other club owners came in, heard me singing there, invited me to come up and sing in Westwood and in Beverly Hills and in Hollywood. And then I got a recording contract, and then I met the guys, Randy Sparks, who was putting the new Christy Minstrels together. And he asked me if I'd like to join the group. They were just coming together for their first real album, and Andy Williams show. We wound up doing 75 Andy Williams shows. And so it was just like you get on a ride at a circus. You get on the roller coaster, and away you go. And there was just no looking back. And by the time I got around to getting my first acting gig, which was I thought they gave me the script, and they said, here, memorize this and show up on the set on Monday morning. And I said, memorize this? What is this? They said, that's the script. I said, you mean I got to know all these words? Well, I can't remember a phone number, I mean, I got to ask somebody their name 4 or 5 times before I get it down. And no way in the world could I remember those words. I couldn't get into Boy Scouts here in the United States because I couldn't remember on my honor, I'll do my best to, help little ladies across the street and be a good guy and all that stuff. The creed of the Boy Scout creed, I couldn't memorize it. So I couldn't get in. So I've had a memory problem all my life. And so I couldn't act because I couldn't remember the lines.
Yeah, with the new Christy Minstrels, you were involved in bringing folk music, I guess, to the mainstream and being one of the first groups to do that. Was that a particular goal of the group when they set out?
Well, the goal of the group, this is the presentation to me. A friend of mine, Artie Podell, at that time, he says, he's the one who extended the invitation to me. He was working with Randy, putting the group together. And he says, we're going to make a lot of money and have a lot of fun. And I thought, well, hey, that's what I'm looking to do. So I said, count me in. So that was our basic goal. First of all, I loved singing. I still love singing. I'm getting ready right now to go over and rehearse with a friend of mine, Terry Talbot, who used to have a group called Mason Prophet back in the late 60s, early 70s. And I don't know if their stuff made it to Australia, but they did about 4 albums on Warner Brothers here in the States. But we just love folk music. We love it. I mean, it's the most fun. We love harmonizing. We love what it has to say. We love the way the guitars feel and sound, and it's just magic stuff. And it was that way in the beginning with the Christies. We loved singing. We loved harmonizing. We had fun with each other on stage. We laughed and bumped each other and horsed around and teased the girls, and the girls would tease us back. And it was a great time. You know, we were like, you know, when little puppies, the first time they come out of the cardboard box on the kitchen floor, and they're just all over it. They're into the cream. They're spilling this. They're knocking that over. They're gnawing on the furniture. Well, that's what we were like. We were like little puppies on the kitchen floor. I mean, we were just everywhere. We were wiggling and having fun, and life was brand new. And we didn't really think much about careers at the time. We were just into the moment of having a wonderful time.
Was it a personal choice of yours to leave the group when you did?
Yeah, it did. I got to the point where I wanted to sing more socially significant songs, you know. Bobby Dylan had just come out with his first album. It was just a knockout album that said some things that I liked hearing, because he was commenting on the social discrepancies in our society. And then I met a guy, Phil Sloan, who wrote the tune "Eve of Destruction," and I really liked that song. And they wouldn't let me sing it in the Christies. They said, no, we have our image, which is the collegiate, you know, mom and apple pie Americana kind of a look, you know. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wrote a song in the Christies called "Green, Green." You know, the grass is green on the far side of the hill. You know, I'm just a good loving rambling. But see, when I wrote that song in '63, that's where I was at. But by '65, I wasn't there anymore. My whole awareness and consciousness of what was going on in the world, Vietnam, everything was happening, and I wanted to address those issues. And so I couldn't go out. And I told the guy one time, I said, you know, I'm doing an impersonation of who I used to be. This is my Barry McGuire impersonation of who I used to be back in '63. But I'm not that person. You know, we all grow every day. We learn new things, and our ideas change, and our understanding changes, and our sense of priorities change. They wouldn't let me change, so I had to leave the group.
I guess it would be impossible to talk to you and not mention Eve of Destruction. How did the whole thing come together for you?
Well, like I said, I met Phil Sloan, some friends of mine, Roger McGuinn and David Crosby and Gene Clark, who at one time had been a Christy minstrel, had put a group together called the Byrds, and it was their opening night with Tambourine Man, and that's where I actually met Bob Dylan for the first night at that opening night, and Lou Adler and a bunch of other people were there. And P.F. Sloan, and so Lou saw me dancing on the floor, and he says, "Hey, McGuire, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Oh, just having fun." And I'd left the Christies. I was about 3 months out of the Christies then, and he says, "Well, you want to do some singing?" I said, "Oh, yeah, man, I love to sing." He says, "Well, come by my office. I've got some tunes I want you to hear." So the following week, I went over to his office, and Phil was there. He sang a few songs for me. When he sang "Eve of Destruction," I thought, man, I really like that song. He says, "Well, you want to record these tunes on Dunhill?" I said, "Sure, let's go for it." So the following week, we were in the studio recording, and we did a couple of songs, and we're doing a third song. We had a 4-hour session, and the fourth song wasn't coming together so good, the third song. So Lou said, "This song's not making it. Sounds like the first song. Let's do something else." I said, "Well, let's do that Eve of Destruction song. I really like that." So we only had about 30 minutes left in the session, and so the musicians went through it twice, just, 4 chords, big deal, and no brainer. And I had the words on a piece of paper all wadded up in my back pocket, so I pulled it out and unfolded it and got all the wrinkles out and hung it on the music stand. And we did it in one take. Did the song in one take. And there's a place in the song where I'm going, you can't twist the truth. And the reason I'm going, is because I lost my words on the paper that I was reading them off of, because it was all wrinkly. So I wanted to go back and redo the vocal track, but that was on a Thursday. But by Monday, the song had been mastered, mixed, and pressed, and it was on the radio the following Monday. So I never did get to go back in and ruin the song by cleaning up the tracks.
It turned out fine as it was.
One take song.
In terms of song topic, it was far removed from what people knew of you with the Christy Minstrels. I guess, as you said, there was a conscious effort on your part to distinguish your solo work from your previous material.
No, see, once again, I wasn't looking to build a career or compare myself with. I was just into the moment. In fact, I still am. I've always been an into the moment person. A guy came up to me after the song became a big hit song. He said, "Well, how does it feel to be a star?" And I said, "Well, it felt just like I felt when I, was sleeping on my friend's couch in the living room after I left the Christies. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car. Nobody wanted to see me. I went to every producer in town, and nobody had the time of day for me. I said, I'm just like I was last week when I was broke, only now I can pay the rent." I said, "What do you think? It doesn't feel any different, it's like people would put a label on you because you had something that was a commercial success, and now they think you're valid. You have something to say that's important. They got me on the Johnny Carson show and the Ed Sullivan show and the Mike Douglas show and all those shows. Because I had a hit song, what do you think about the Vietnam War, Yeah. Well, it's the same thing I thought last week when you didn't want to talk to me, So I always thought that the star thing was in the eye of the beholder and the press, and it had nothing to do with me as a person. And so I wasn't trying to change my image, or I just wanted to do what I thought was happening. I wound up going to New York to do Hair on Broadway. I was in the original Broadway show. Played the male lead, and one of the two male leads, and played the part of Claude Hooper Bukowski. And I wasn't looking to crack into show business or get into Broadway music. I was just doing it because it was fun and it said what I thought needed to be said. So that was my criteria for everything I did. Was, first of all, was it fun? And second of all, was it true to what I felt in my heart was the path of... See, when I was a little boy, my grandmother told me, "Barry, when you grow up," she says, I was about 7 years old, she says, "you're going to know the truth, and the truth is going to set you free." And man, I wanted to be free. That's what the 60s was all about, was freedom. And I figured if anything was going to set me free, it would have to be the truth, because certainly lies never set anyone free. So I went looking for the truth. When I left the Christy Minstrels and sang Eva Destruction, I felt it was a statement of truth. When I was on Broadway doing "Get Me Down to There, Hair, Shoulder Length and Longer," I felt it was a statement of truth. But then I pushed it to the limit, and I found it had discrepancies and loopholes, and the foundation crumbled out. And so it wasn't the fullness of truth. It was just a stepping stone towards truth. So that was basically for everything I did, whether it was music, no work, shows. It was, the criteria was, is it fun, and is it the truth? And so that's why I did what I did.
Many great folk artists have done over the years that have recorded also material for children, and I know you've done that too. Did your approach to songwriting differ when putting together that type of material?
Yes, it was exactly the same. Was it the truth, and was it fun? I figured if it's fun for me, it's got to be fun for the kids. And we, and like kid stuff, I do some silly things. I do like Big Rock Candy, Lemonade Springs, Cinnamon Tea. I want to be where the living's free. Won't you come along with me to the Big Rock Candy Mountains? I do just fun. It's fun, And I think the other thing along with truth is that it is not morally destructive. That it doesn't disintegrate anybody. That it doesn't turn them on to destructive habits. All the things you were singing about, the lifestyle we were presenting in Hair. Over a 10-year period, I lost 16 of my friends, my personal friends, through drug overdose and suicide, because of the lifestyle that we were living and we were promoting for others to join in on. So I thought, well, wait a minute, this is killing us. One time I was at a friend's house and had a big block of cocaine on the coffee table about the size of a concrete cinder brick, you know. I never saw so much coke in my life. And we're sitting there shoveling it up our nose, and I looked up on the wall, and here's a poster of Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and you know, Brian Jones and Marilyn Monroe and Lenny Bruce. They're all dead. All of them are dead. And I had this spoonful of coke in one hand and my nose, you know, one side of my nose plugged up with my other finger, and I was just about to snort it up, and I looked up at the wall, and I looked at all these dead faces looking at me, and I turned to my friend Owen, and I said, maybe this stuff isn't good for us. Hello? But I went ahead and shoveled it in my nose anyway. But I started looking at what we were doing and how many people were dying from our so-called freedom, and I thought, something's wrong, man. Something's missing here. So I stopped doing that, and I started heading off in another direction. So, but the kid stuff is basically the same. Does it tell the truth? Is it healthy? Does it support life? You know, and is it fun?
When you became a born-again Christian, that was a major turning point in your life. Was there a particular defining moment you can recall when you made that decision to go down that path?
Well, I'd been, you know, when I left Broadway, I left here, I came back out to California, and I was hanging out with Denny Doherty. You know Denny? He's Monday.
Oh, that was in public, of course.
You know, he's a Halifax Irishman, you know, man, he can sing the birds out of the trees. And he was living in Hollywood, up on the Hollywood Hills there, and I was living at his house, but I was still searching for truth, even though I thought, well, hair didn't have the fullness of it, or it had partial truth, and I was into Eastern religions and meditation and Kundalini yoga. Denny used to tease me, he told me that I belonged to the Guru of the Month Club in Hollywood. Every time a new teacher or sage or Sai Baba, Meher Baba, Haji Baba, you know, any of those Babas come to town, I would be there in the front row, you know, breathing and oming, Baba Hamda Baba, you know, trying to soak up the truth, but nothing seemed to work. They said some good things, but I just couldn't seem to hang into it. And then one day I went over to Eric's house. He was the lead guitar player for M&Ps, and he had this little book on his coffee table right next to the marijuana. I was sitting there rolling a joint, and this book said, Good News for Modern Man. And I thought, hey, man, I could use some good news, you know, and I'm a modern man. So I took it home with me, and when I got home by myself, I opened it up, and right there on the flyleaf page it said, you know, the New Testament in modern English, and I got really, really angry. I thought, I can't, but look at this, man. Them Jesus freaks are disguising the Bible now. You know, how sneaky can you get? Threw it on the floor, and it laid there for days. And then finally, one day, just out of bored, sarcastic curiosity, I picked up this little Life and Times of Jesus Christ, and I started, for the first time in my life, I stopped looking at Christianity. I stopped looking at organizations and denominations and all the stuff that goes on in his name, and I took a look at the man himself and what he had to say, how he treated his friends, you know, what he had to say to the street people, to the prostitutes and the homosexuals and the drug addicts and the thieves, and, you know, what he had to say about the military, to the military people, the political leaders, the religious leaders, and everything, how he treated the little children, you know, everything that Jesus had to say. His words, as I put them to the test against what I knew to be true through my own, you know, 35, 38 years of life, I knew what he said was true. I could find no falseness, no duality, no shadows, no double meanings in what he said, you know. And bottom line, he said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And I thought, well, that's the answer to the eve of destruction. That's the answer to Hair on Broadway. This is the answer we've been looking for. You know, so I couldn't walk away. I didn't want to be a Christian, though. I wanted to, you know, live according to his concepts and precepts, but I didn't want to be one of those, you know. I thought if I said yes to Jesus, I'd have to get a powder blue leisure suit and white shoes and look like Pat Boone the rest of my life, you know. But, which wouldn't be too bad. I got a Christmas card from Pat last year. He looks better than I've ever looked. God's been good to Pat, you know. But after about a year of wrestling with it, I said, okay. And see, I discovered something, too. And I could never figure out, you know, the Christianity thing. They're always talking about the blood of Jesus and, you know, the forgiven of our sin. And one day I finally realized that there has to be justice. You know, I mean, if God is a God of justice, I mean, a God at all, he has to be a God of justice. And then I realized if I were to receive justice, well, my life is forfeit, because, I mean, I've turned people onto drugs, they overdosed and died. You know, I mean, I've paid for abortions, I've murdered unborn babies, you know, I mean, I'm a murderer, a thief, a liar, a fornicator. I mean, I've done everything, the Ten Commandments, I broke them all. And I thought, well, my life is forfeit. But then I saw how Jesus himself came, lived an innocent life, and then sacrificed his innocent life on my behalf. He paid my debt. He established justice for me. Nobody else did that. Sai Baba didn't do that. You know, Meher Baba didn't do that. Baha'u'llah didn't do that. None of those guys established justice for me. And he said that now that God the Father can extend, this is what makes Jesus different than all the other religions in the world that I saw, that I was into at the time, is that now that God the Father could extend mercy and forgiveness in justice to me personally. See, I mean, if reincarnation was it, man, I could be born a million times, rebirthed and rebirthed and rebirthed, be the best guy that ever, I could never undo the things that I've done. I could never bring back life to the people that are dead now because of me. You know, I mean, once you kill somebody, they're dead. And you can be reincarnated 10,000 times and become a great humanitarian in every life, but you're never going to bring life back to that person that died, that you killed. And I saw that the only way I could ever have a new beginning, and it's not a second chance, the thing about Jesus is it's a new beginning, was to receive his mercy and step into the gift and his justice that he established for me. So that was my turning point. That's when I left Hollywood and came up to Fresno. My uncle, well, he's gone now. He passed away 10 years ago, but he was an Armenian man that I loved with all my heart. And he would walk me along the river and read his Bible to me and just pray with me. And that's when that was 1971. And it's been, I mean, I've never looked back. Just been straight ahead, just fullness upon fullness upon fullness of experience and fulfillment, and you know, just the flavor of my life has blown me away.
I guess it would be hard to imagine what direction your life and career may have taken had you not gone that way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty desolate at that time because of the search that I was into kept pulling me out of the mainstream of rock and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so I don't know what would have happened. I would have probably done like a lot of my friends and just committed suicide. You know, I had a friend of mine tell me, you know, Barry, perhaps the answer we're looking for lies on the other side of death's door. And a month later, he was dead. He went up to Big Sur with a sleeping bag and a jug full of barbiturates and smoked a joint and swallowed the jug and laid there in a sleeping bag and watched the sun go down and slipped away, you know. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought maybe that's what I should do. Maybe he found the answer we were looking. Maybe the answer is on the other side of death's door. And actually it is, because that's one of the things that Scripture tells us. Unless we die, we can't bring forth new life. And in a way, I did commit suicide in 1971, but not biologically, not physically. I died to myself, my ego, my pride, all the crap that filled my life, and just surrendered myself into Christ. And since then, it's been a gradual growing process, you know, for the last 28 years or so, 29 years.
What prompted you move to New Zealand in the 80s? You spent a few years over there.
I moved to New Zealand in 84. You know, I married a Kiwi girl, and we lived in the States for 10 years. And I thought, you know, and we've talked, and I'd been to New Zealand and Australia many times. I just love both of the nations, man. I mean, this is not because I'm talking to you, but after having lived in New Zealand, I love New Zealand, but I love Australia. Has a little bit more of a rugged, Australians will at least try it, you know what I mean? They'll go for it. Kiwis are a little bit too English for me. They're a little too conservative, you know. Yeah. They say, well, it's always been that way, and that's just the way it is, you know. Well, Australians, they go, well, you try it different, try it that way. That's the way Americans are, Well, give it a go, see if it works. If it doesn't work, well, forget it. If it does work, well, we got a new way to do it. Maybe it's better. So, but I loved New Zealand, and Mari and I had talked, if anything ever happened to me, that she would just sell our home. We were living in Colorado at the time, in Denver, and move back to New Zealand with the kids. And so we went down there. I did a tour down there, and I came home. I said, well, why should we wait till I die for you to move to why don't we move to New Zealand now so I can enjoy it too? So we sold our Colorado home and moved down there. Lived there 6 years. And I did a lot of work through Australasia, all up in the Philippines and the Solomons and all into India and Malaysia and Singapore. While I was down there, I had a great run in the southern continent. And I started working with an organization called World Vision, and we started doing kids concerts. I wound up I sang with 20,000 New Zealand school children over a 2-year period, and raised 2,000 sponsors for third world children. And I thought, man, if I could do that in New Zealand, what might I do in the United States? So I really came back to the States to do children's concerts, where I get about 300-400 kids on stage with me, and we sing folk songs, and then we give people an opportunity to sponsor, third world kids at the end of the show. But I got here, and, people just weren't interested. I tried and tried and tried for 3 years. Finally, I gave up. I couldn't get people interested in doing it here, which was a tragedy. So it's one of the that's probably the greatest disappointment in my professional life, was that I couldn't get the kids' concerts going in America, because we could have generated hundreds of thousands of sponsors.
Let's talk about your current association with Terry Talbot, how that came about.
Well, Terry and I have known each other for 30 years, and, like I say, he and his brother had a group called Mason Prophet back in the late 60s, early 70s. He became a Christian in 73. I think John became a Christian in 71 or 2. And I met him. He was doing an album called Firewind, and he asked me to sing on the album. We had such a great time, became immediate, instant, lifelong friends. But we never sang. We would only work on albums together. He'd sing background on my albums, or I'd sing on his albums. And then about 6-8 years ago, we were out on the road, actually the first time, doing a tour together. And one evening backstage, we were tuning up, and we started singing "Blowing in the Wind." Hadn't sung this song in 15 years. And we just loved it. And harmonizing, we loved it. And we started singing other folk songs that we could remember. And we thought, well, how come nobody's singing this stuff? There's a lot of truth in these songs. So we decided we'd give it a go, and we did. Booked a little tour, did a little album, in our backyard, kind of backyard productions. Sold them at the concert. Sold more albums at the concert than I ever did with a record company. And I had a ton of fun. And we haven't stopped. We've been singing together for 5 years now. And it's just, we got 60 dates on the calendar right now. We did about 80 dates last year. So it's just, like a runaway train. It's an avalanche. And it's outrageously fun. People little kids, old retired people, teenagers, 20-year-old people, all ages, every class, colors, nationalities. I don't care if they're New Agers. I don't care if they're, what their thing is. If they're Omers or meditators or homosexuals or whatever they are, they come and love the music. The music is really fun.
And what's the structure of your live shows? Is it both of you on stage together the whole time, or do you take solo sets as well?
We're a duo. We walk out, the two of us, and we sing for an hour and a half. And laugh a lot and forget what we're doing and get back on track. It's really fun. And the audience is infected by the fun we have, and they're infected by the truth and the words of the songs that we're singing. And so everybody, there are reflective moments, there are introspective moments, there are outgoing, fun, hand-clapping, foot-stomping moments, and the sing-along times, and it's a full spectrum. It's a great evening of music.
And it's a good mixture of the old folk material and new material as well.
And some of the new stuff. Yeah, we've written a few new songs. Yeah, and we pick up new stuff. Like Like we do Johnny Osborne's song, God Like One of Us, you know. What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, you know? And because we think there's truth in the song. So any song that has truth in it is a good song to sing, isn't it?
Sure. Absolutely.
That's once again, that's our criteria. Is it fun? Does the audience enjoy it? Do we enjoy it? And does it have truth in it? Wholesome truth.
And just before we wind up, Barry, what would you see as the greatest achievement of the whole folk movement of the 60s?
The folk music of the 60s?
Yeah.
I think out of the folk music of the 60s was birthed and I'm speaking of this now as a follower of Jesus, you know, with a Christian perspective. And I think the greatest turn, because there really was, from my perspective now, I'm not talking about anybody else, but there was really a search for truth. People had reached a point of saturation with materialism in America, where they saw that it didn't bring happiness to the richest people they knew weren't happy, their parents weren't happy, the college professors weren't happy, the chairman of the board wasn't happy in his new Rolls Royce as he was driving to work, you know. Nobody they knew was happy. And so we all hit the streets looking for what made us happy. What are the real priorities? So I think the greatest thing to come out of the 60s was those few people, or not very many, that came on through and actually found the fullness of truth. And to me, that is in the person of Jesus. You know, it's not in the church, it's not religion, it's not Christianity. It's knowing who Jesus is, what he did, you know, the gift that he made possible for me, the trade he made, his life for mine, and the freedom that came to those individuals, because I don't think they would have found Christ in the church because of the religious traditions and dogma and all the stuff that goes on that has nothing to do with love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And that was the bottom line. Like I say, that was the hippie creed. And so some people actually stumbled through and you know, felt our way through and came up with the right side up answer. You know, that Jesus is the one who established the ruler of truth for us to measure our lives by, you know. And the rest of it, everybody just kind of slipped back into mediocrity, slipped back into making money, slipped back into Silicon Valley, you know, new Corvettes, new motorcycles, buy a car, you know, pay the rent, drugs, rock and roll, you know, drug overdose, death, you know, just kept on. I look at what's going on now, and I see what happened to, I look at, you know, guys that I used to hang with and run with, like, you know, John Phillips, Mick Jagger, people like that, and they're just, I just feel sorry for them, you know. I wouldn't trade places with anybody I know.
Okay, Barry. Look, thanks for your time. It's been a wonderful treat speaking with you.
Well, thank you. Man, I'm glad I'm not paying for the phone call.
No, you don't need to worry about that. Thanks for all the music, and we certainly hope we can catch a Talbot Maguire show down here in the near future. We'd love to see you.
I don't know if you will. I don't know if I'm going to be flying that. I'm 65 this year, you know.
Wow.
And I don't like long airplane rides. You know, I told Terry, if we ever fly overseas again, it's going to have to be first class, or I'm not going, you know.
Fair enough.
So if somebody wants to cough up a first class ticket, well, we'll consider it. But yeah.
We'll take a collection for you then.
Okay, that's a good deal. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Barry.
Uh-huh.
All the best. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.